All right, we are recording for chapter 2. I had to remember, I almost said chapter 3, which with Prelude it kind of is chapter 3. But anyway, chapter 2 of Attack of the Clones. Um, it is a much longer chapter than the others. I have many more notes, and some of them may trigger rants from me, so this will probably be a longer video. Alright, mainly it has two parts, two places, two settings for it. One is the Lars homestead, and the other is with Padme. And yeah, I'm gonna start with the Padme one because it's the Lars homestead is a bit more involved. So yeah, okay. So with Padme, we actually meet her at her sister's house. It's not immediately clear it is her sister's house. A relative of hers, older, but is eventually identified as her sister, Sola, who has two daughters. And it's in basic Padme is there, Sola's here, they're on a swing together, assuming like a porch swing kind of thing, just watching as the two daughters are, just playing around in the yard, and R2-D2 is there, and apparently they play with him as well. And we also get a moment later on with Padme as well. That gets more into her senatorial work. But with this, it is somewhat interesting because Sola is basically talking to her and being, kind to her, but is basically saying, when are you going to settle down? When are you... And it is a fair point, especially for how it is described there, and Padme has to basically agree, that she constantly is making the Senate, the Republic, her priority. And so is always making decisions and always being concerned about that, never about herself, about the things that she wants, such as having her own children. It's like never making that a priority to her. It's always these other priorities. It's actually, kind of a neat thing there with how that is being handled there. Seems respectful, seems real. But it's also really, I think what's neat there is how it is setting up her being interested in that later on in the book, but also in the movie as well. It's like, it's priming her to want to become a wife and mother, as opposed to just a senator. I'm just making sure. Okay, I think it's mainly that. Although in that portion of it is also mentioned the Military Creation Act, which is what's before the Senate at the moment, which is exactly what it sounds like. Should the Republic have an army of its own, a military of its own? We then leave that, go back to Lars homestead, then come back to Padme, and she's in her office. That's like part of the palace, and actually hears some commotion going on outside, but which is apparently spice miners with some dispute. A little unclear there, but at this point, we're more so in her head concerning her senatorial duties. And it explains how she is in fact against the Military Creation Act, and that right now it seems like it's 50-50 in the Senate for who is for it and who's against it. But there's one thing that it mentions that I actually find annoying because it's really quite naive. Padme knew that the vote would be close, with the Senate almost evenly divided over whether the Republic should create a formal army. It galled her to think that so many of her colleagues would be voting based on personal gain, rather than on what was best for the Republic. Everything from potential contracts to supply the army for their home systems. It's like, that's actually what their responsibilities would be. That's something I don't like. But to direct payoffs from some of the commerce guilds. It's like, yes, obviously that's corruption. But it's like, well, if I'm in favor of of having the army, they have to eat. And we'll be providing that. So that would be good. That's actually what their responsibility would be, including hers. Her responsibility is to Naboo. Is to represent Naboo to the benefit of Naboo in the Senate. Her responsibility isn't to the whole of the Republic. I mean, it is there as well, but it is like, she's the Naboo senator. She's not the Republic's senator. She's the senator of Naboo to the Republic. So, like that is either her naivete being shown there, or the author not understanding certain things. And it is also how the Republic doesn't have a standing army makes no sense. For something that large, because at minimum, it should exist for securing trade routes. At minimum, it should already be present. And she's also got some stuff in here. It's actually on that same page. I shouldn't have closed it. Yeah, she was steadfast against it. And then talking about the Republic was built on tolerance. The only element that they shared was tolerance of one another. The creation of an army might prove unsettling, even threatening, to so many of those systems and species being far removed from the great city planet of Coruscant. And it's like, I get that, but that's also really dumb, this idea that the Republic is founded on tolerance. I mean, it's supposed to be a system of government, which means it should be founded on law. I mean, the law can have tolerance built into it, but it's still supposed to be founded on law, on those principles that are recorded, that are written down. You like has a constitution. This is what constitutes it, and it is also the whole going back to the whole how I said they should at least have something that would be securing trade routes. You do need that. I mean, this idea right now, if they don't have a standing army, what that means is that, like, when Naboo was attacked in The Phantom Menace by the Trade Federation, the Trade Federation had a military. Naboo did not, and could not protect itself. Naboo being a member of the Republic, that should have triggered a military response. Like, not a, oh, well, this needs to be investigated. No, it should be a, hey, there's reports of this. We're going to go and at least, we're going to have a military ship go see that, oh, there's something going on here. Trade Federation, what are you doing? And then kick them out potentially. It's like, that actually should exist there. I mean, it's kind of like how with the United States, we have the National Guard, yes, but we do have federal army. And it's like, so if Kansas is attacked, it's like, well, no, the federal army will respond and do something there. It's not up to, like, convincing people that, oh, the California National Guard should go in or something like that. It's because, I mean, who else was going to help her if she, in the Phantom Menace, go to, well, not to Tatooine, let's say Alderaan, go to Alderaan and get some help. It's like, that doesn't actually make sense and is not how the Republic should function, because you could always have those worlds that choose they don't want an army of their own, so they are completely reliant on the Republic, and also those, technically it's a group, the Trade Federation, that chooses to have a military of its own, which would mean then that it can always oppress any world that doesn't have a military because it has nothing to fall back on. And it's just, it is funny to me reading this because in A Letter from Catherine, I do talk about the military there and how, well, for one thing, it is technically separate from from the interstellar government, which isn't really a government anyway. But its sole purpose is actually just to secure the trade routes. And to that end, it collects tolls. That's how it's funded. But that technically it also exists as a mercenary, in a mercenary type way, so that if a world were to decide that, hey, we want to hire the military to do something, they can. But it's also the military itself will be like, well, I don't want to work with you, so I'm not going to do that. But others could be like, yes. And so we can separate up, but split up, and essentially then all conflict with that military becomes a civil war. When it becomes like that, at least as far as the military is seen, even though the worlds involved would be separate. But it's also, part of the reason I did that was because Earth, being the most developed planet, and the first planetary colonies being so developed, would have the ability to form their own military. Whereas a new colony has no such ability, would be too poor, not have the resources to do that on its own. So you need this independent body that its funding is from the tolls. So it's just all movement funds it, which it's not Earth funds it, it's not, let's say, Alpha Centauri funds it. It's not that. It's not loyal to them. It's loyal to just basically free travel. So that way you can't have, like, well, we're Earth, so yeah, we want to conquer you. Obviously, we will just do that. It's like, you can... I put it together that way, I describe it that way, and I'm sure I'm going to have to go into great detail in that to show that, yeah, that's actually very much desired, and I'm trying to create it that way so that it doesn't have any reason to be loyal to one specific world. What's describing here is that's exactly how the militaries exist in the Star Wars universe, in the Star Wars galaxy at this point. that they only exist that if they exist only for their own world. So if another is in danger, they will not go. They don't have any reason to go and help. If the Republic as a whole is in danger, they can decide, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I'm out. This is incredibly stupid. So yeah, it's incredibly stupid, incredibly naive. And if anything, it shouldn't. The smart play here for her would not be to say, no, we shouldn't have this. No. It should be, yes, we can have it. Here's the rules of engagement, essentially. Here are the laws governing it. Because essentially what I'm describing with this military is it acting as a police force. That there are regular laws here that the Trade Federation was violating them. It now has a responsibility and obligation to go and respond to that. And that's what you'd need. But if she's concerned about the idea of, say, this military being formed and then going out to conquer other worlds that aren't part of the Republic, on the one hand, I understand that concern. On the other hand, though, some of those worlds maybe would benefit from it. I mean, it's like how I mentioned in The Phantom Menace with Tatooine, like the Republic anti-slavery laws are so firm. It's like, well, the Republic doesn't exist here. It's like, that's actually not a bad reason to say, hey, Republic, why don't we go capture Tatooine and force it to be part of the Republic, at least as a territory, so that we can enforce the anti-slavery laws. That actually is not that unreasonable. You could even be like, yes, the Hutts, you're still in control, but guess what? Slavery's gone. You could still do something like that. And that's not wholly unreasonable, and it is something that the Republic could do. And it's also, let's consider it doesn't have that army. Why can't the Hutts decide, I'm going to invade Naboo and start enforcing slavery there? And say, okay, well, we'll just up and go and ask the Republic help. Well, the Republic can't help. Short of getting Alderaan, to continue using the example, to commit its resources, its people, to save the Naboo. I mean, it really is nonsense that there wouldn't already be this army. In some degree. And yes, technically the Jedi should be serving that role, but the Jedi don't necessarily have their own fleet, so they'd always be dependent on others in that regard, so it's... Yeah. And it's also the Jedi should be more independent from the Republic anyway, in my opinion. Okay, yeah, okay. That basically covers it. Covers the Padme portion of it. Oh, wait a minute, there was... Yeah, I guess just pointing out the whole... Wait, she's got a sister now? Because it definitely seemed like in The Phantom Menace, she had no family. Because there's never any mention any. And it makes no sense how she was basically brought up to be the queen, even though you're elected, so she might have... all that made no sense. But it also is curious how Sola says that somebody that's been in these political spheres this long is normally retired by now. It's like... She's like, what, 25, 26 at this point? I don't remember what the gap is between her and Anakin, who is 20. It's like, she's been doing this for only about a decade, actually. Maybe a little bit more? It's like, what are you talking about? Palpatine is Chancellor still, and he was Senator before that. He's been involved with it a long time. I'm sure what are you talking about? It makes no sense that, but anyway, coming over to the Lars homestead. So Beru is around, but is not yet married to Owen. And it also mentions that Beru grew up in Mos Eisley, but still seems suited to the life of a moisture farmer, according to Shmi. Which just the kind of hardness to it that, yes, I can take this kind of thing, that the hardships there. But also, they're not desiring adventure. So it actually has some stuff in there talking about how when she and Klieg are talking with each other, that it would have been funny if Anakin was actually still around and tried to become part of this family, because the Lars homestead is a generational homestead. And Owen is like actually looking forward to taking it over and will be very proud of fulfilling the responsibilities there. Whereas Anakin is always somebody who wanted to leave, go off, and have adventures. And so it's like they're kind of incompatible, and she's actually smiling and laughing a little bit laughing a little bit at it, because the whole, yeah, I know you love him, but he'd frustrate the hell out of you. I mean, it is kind of funny that. But Baru is exactly the kind of person that would be able to stay there. And there's a little bit more to that I'll get to in a little bit. 3PO is there, and it actually mentions that Shmi is the one who finished him, who actually put the casing on him. And he continues to be a reminder of Anakin to her, and so is special to her. Which, it's possible that his Klieg is, and just be clear, Klieg Lars is her husband. And I might be pronouncing it wrong, I'm sorry, but he teases 3PO, which I'm not sure how much of that might be a little mean-spirited, in that, like, it's a reminder to him as well that there is that hole in her heart that none of them can fill. I believe that's some of it, but it could also just be he likes teasing something, because he's teasing 3PO and about like leaving him outside in a sandstorm to be cleaned off, but then some of the larger rocks might hit and damage him. And Shmi's like, stop that. Better than what I just said it. So then Klieg's like, all right, well, I just need a new target. How about Baru? And Shmi's like, no, you don't. But Baru is like, look, I'm not going to be a very good wife if I can't handle the old man here. And it's like, Klieg is like, all right, let's get this going. And they just start trading insults back and forth. Owen throws some in. Shmi tries not to involve himself in this, is going over making dinner. And then suddenly gets a vegetable in her face. Because Baru threw it at Klieg, but kind of went over his head and hit her. And so a food fight starts. Although it does say there's more threats thrown than actual food. But it is a nice family dynamic kind of moment in there. And I actually do wonder about it a little bit with one thing, because potentially this could have been done to provide a comparison, and also with Padme, even her and her sister together, a comparison of that relationship, those family dynamics, and Anakin's that we had in the interlude. No, prelude. It's an introduction. I accidentally turned the tracking on. Hang on, that should turn it off. Yep, okay. Yeah, it takes that symbol to do it. Anyhow, that gesture. In that he was afraid to talk with Obi-Wan. Like, he doesn't feel that he can be open and honest with Obi-Wan in that way. He feels he can with Palpatine, but it's like he basically is talking about only having these two people in his life that he can work with. That he can potentially talk to, and one of them he can't. Whereas here, you have this family dynamic where they're able to trade insults with each other. It's expected, essentially. And they're having fun. And even though, yes, they're trading insults, it's teasing. There's still very much a love there. And even Shmi, who doesn't really want to be involved with some of this stuff, is trying to be a little bit above that, is also, like, she's involved in it as well. She is having some fun with it. So, I mean, it is a healthy relationship there. And then how Sola is looking after Padme, basically recognizing that your priorities are not necessarily that great, sis. Like, you're constantly doing these things for these other people. You do need to take some appreciation of the fact that there are things you want and you should go for them. You should try for them. Whereas Anakin doesn't seem to have any of that. Maybe with Palpatine, because we haven't actually seen the relationship between those two yet, but still is the Lars family, and the Amidala family, between Padme and Sola, shows a greater health and function to their dynamics, to their families, than Anakin currently seems to have. Which I do think is very important, because I've mentioned this before, it does seem like, to me, the way the Jedi take the children and then raise them is an example of the Jedi being fallen. That this is, in fact, not good. This is unhealthy. And it is possible, and I might be reading into this because I already have this theory as opposed to being intentionally written in there. Sorry, that's the case. But the idea then that here are these people that are basically normal and healthy adults, and I just turned on the tracking. Yeah, because hands up. There we go. So, but who is it that ends up having all the emotional problems. It's Anakin. So I do have this theory, and we'll see how the prequel trilogy books continue to play out if it does support my theory here, that his fall to becoming Vader is partially because the Jedi don't actually... They're dysfunctional. They're completely dysfunctional. It's like, even to get, very specific with it, looking... And this will be for Revenge of the Sith. Like, if he just didn't have to keep a secret from even Obi-Wan, just Obi-Wan, if he felt he could trust Obi-Wan to say, Padme and I got married, and to just have that there. But it's like, he can't even trust that. Now, maybe that's going to be better explained in the book, that, like, Palpatine knows. Although I actually kind of doubt it for certain reasons, but in any case, well, no, he shouldn't. No, he does know. He does know by the end. It's just there's certain dangers there, because the whole Children of Skywalker, you'd think he'd be paying better attention. Anyway, I do kind of think I have that theory that if Anakin didn't need to keep so much of that stuff secret, he may have been then well adjusted enough to handle some stuff and not fall to becoming Vader. But because the Jedi are so dysfunctional, Palpatine is providing something more functional that makes it easier for him to go over to Palpatine and fall to Vader. So we'll see. So it might be that I think that comparison there, it might be accidental, and I might be making more of it than there actually is, but it is possible to draw it here, I think. So anyway, getting on to the rest of it. Okay, so the last two bits I have that is just the Tuskens are pushing on the homestead, are like testing the security there. And this does worry both Lars, Klieg, and Owen. And they're even talking about we should probably go and talk to some of the other farmers in the area, see what's happening with them, and maybe organize something to basically raid the Tuskens, to go out and push them back, that yes, we are strong, if you come in, we will defend ourselves. Which kind of is funny, because going back to the Military Creation Act, because they do actually even mention potentially requesting the police, the Mos Eisley police, to come in and do that. It's like, that's kind of exactly why the public army would make sense. So that then you can have those smaller homesteads that can't fully protect themselves come and be like, okay, you're an invading force that you're not supposed to be here, we're pushing you out. It is just kind of funny where it's like, Padme, this is exactly what you need. I mean, it's also part of the naivete of Padme is the idea that there aren't evil people out there. I mean, it's one of those, you do need the power. Good people might be able to be tolerant of each other, but they can't. If they tolerate evil, then the evil will attack them, and hurt them, destroy them even. So you do need the ability to defend yourself. And it is kind of the whole, that parable of the scorpion and the frog, is it? Might be a different animal. But, the scorpion constantly promising, I won't sting you, as the frog carries it across the stream. But, in the end, before reaching all the way across, the scorpion does sting the frog, and the frog's like, why did you do that? Now we're both going to drown. And the scorpion just goes, it's in my nature. Now, that isn't necessary. It is in its nature, and is not, in this example, as far as these creatures are concerned, evil, but is still that idea that if something or someone does have an evil nature, you need to be able to protect yourself from that. And it's naive to think that, oh, that doesn't exist. It does. And then the last bit is it does end with Shmi actually having been kidnapped, because apparently she has a habit. I just want to quickly... Okay. It does seem that the next chapter does continue on Tatooine. So we're actually getting quite a distance before we get back to Anakin. But, yeah, so apparently she has the habit of going out before breakfast to collect mushrooms and such, and she was abducted at that time. And Owen and Klieg did find it odd that she hadn't come back yet, was following her tracks, and then saw that she was surrounded, and it's like, Klieg actually, like, collapses on the ground crying, and it actually has a kind of nice moment. Yeah. Klieg Lars, as strong and tough a man as the region had ever known, fell to his knees and wept. We have to go after her, Dad, came a suddenly solid and unwavering voice. He looked up and back to see Owen standing there, a man indeed and no more a boy, his expression grim and determined. It actually is, kind of nice writing there. It's like now we are, like, as it says, Owen is now no longer a boy, but a man here who's like, we're going to go and get her. And also showing Klieg, he does deeply, deeply love Shmi. And she does love him as well. That is, in fact, she even remarks on that a little bit mentally. About how maybe it was the fact that he had freed her that made her feel more willing to marry him. But then it's like, no, I really do love him. Like, she's like, no, I do fully and deeply love him. I fully and deeply love Owen, all of this. And it is part of the whole, even though it's been 10 years since Anakin had left. And 5 years since they had met, by the way. Shmi and Klieg had met 5 years prior, that is mentioned. It still is like, in her mind, did I maybe do this just because it benefits me? It's like, well, no. And also Owen being there, it's like being a surrogate Anakin, I should say, since he is her stepson, but surrogate Anakin. That she does sometimes have that doubt, but it is always for her, no, I do actually love him fully. I love Owen fully. That stuff, they also provide me that benefit, but I would still be here even if Anakin hadn't left. Which again is kind of that whole dynamic. It's like, why is, we haven't gotten to it yet, but why is Anakin with the Jedi? And I don't know if we will get to it, but is it more transactional based? Is it Obi-Wan is training him not because he actually believes in Anakin, not because he believes he's the chosen one, but because he made the promise to Qui-Gon. So it's like, it's just him paying off a debt to Qui-Gon as opposed to actually having care and love for the boy. Like that. Potentially there's an element there. You could even say that the council agreeing to have Anakin trained could have been that as well, where it's we owe it to Qui-Gon, as opposed to being the thing that is actually right. Which would be dysfunction versus function. Shmi, it is a functional, healthy relationship there. So it's, might be reading more into that than there is there, but it is interesting to see at least the potential for comparisons already. And yeah, really, I don't have an issue with the writing so far, despite how many chapters in we are, about 3. It's just Padme is naive, which that could be one of those points that they had to hit. Yeah, it's also inconsistent, because I even point this out at the end of Phantom Menace. Yes, they're such a peaceful planet, they don't have the ability to defend themselves from the Trade Federation. But their queen is still their elected queen is still trained such that, despite being just out of girlhood, is able to move about like a seasoned warrior, and keeps 2 blasters hidden in her throne. This woman should understand the importance of having a Republic army that is available to all of the Republic. Because clearly she, even without the Trade Federation stuff, still had training, still had to know how to protect herself, and have to have the capability to protect herself. Not all worlds have that capability. The Republic army can provide that, though. Which is one of those, it's not an issue with the army that you have, it would be an issue with how it is commanded, how it is controlled, which, that's why I was saying, you make sure the law is written right for that. And it is also, I just looked at the time, it's also that aspect of tyranny versus law, which is, tyranny is, when the Emperor becomes Emperor, when Palpatine becomes the Emperor, that it's like, it just serves him. It doesn't serve anyone else, it serves him. Versus if there's law that, no, this is how things work, you can and cannot do this. Like, tyranny is rule of man versus rule of law. Because the law should be applied equally, it should therefore be inherently just. Obviously, that would assume perfection, and perfection isn't truly attainable, but it still is. That is a principle. Not tolerance, that is a principle you would base a government on. And technically, law should be tolerant in that it doesn't care about other things. It's supposed to just be this is what happened, so this is what happens next. Like, you broke this law, this is the punishment described. And you broke the law, we proved you broke the law. This is the punishment prescribed, you're doing the punishment. That's tolerant because you're not supposed to have these other factors in there. Anyhow, as I said, it might be, as I was saying, it might be that Padme is just supposed to be this naive, which I don't think makes sense. Or it is we need this point to hit, and so it's a little bit of a contrivance that the Republic would not already have this army. But, you know what? It's a contrivance that is fair because it is so important to have this as part of the story later on. So it's like, yeah, it's a contrivance, but it might be one where it's like, there's not much we can do about it. We have to take it as it. But it could also be better explained later on. Perhaps it is that, in fact, that could work, that there are standing armies on different worlds that can be called up by the Republic. So it's more so the idea of the Republic having its own, so it doesn't need to summon Alderaan's army at a time and potentially put the burdens of one world onto Alderaan, even if Alderaan has no interest. So if they give that kind of explanation, it's like, okay, now you've addressed the contrivance. Hopefully we get that. But that would be an explanation for it. But we will see. It's essentially, putting it another way, having a federated army. So it's because the Republic exists as a federation, that a federated army that would be from all and serve all versus Alderaan's army that would be from Alderaan and serve Alderaan, except when the Republic is like, well, no, we want this to go here and do this. So, which would also in some ways touch on being tyrannical, because now it's these other places that don't have an army can abuse the fact that, well, it's Alderaan's army. It's not our people that'll die. So, yeah, we can send them to do whatever. Anyway. Okay. So, yeah, longer video. Figured it would be with the number of notes, and I knew that there would be some things to trigger rants. See you next time.